All righty. And here we go. So this is Webster University, and we're here to talk about two programs, specifically our MAT with an emphasis in special education, as well as our BCBA program that exists as an emphasis area in our master's in special education degree, as well as a standalone advanced graduate certificate. So advanced slide, please, Renee. This is us, and we have introduced ourselves. So there we all are again. And as we go, if you need emails or contact information, we'll be putting that in the chat. Like all good special educators, I have to give you an agenda and provide preventative prediction for you. So we've done some introductions and who's in Zoom. We're going to be doing more of a high-level discussion about just our overall ethos and vision and philosophy of how we prepare educators. And then we'll give you a little bit of specific information about, like I said, the MAT and the BCBA. And then we also have Molly here from Special School District to discuss and clarify any incentives, grants, and tuition reimbursement through SSD. And then obviously we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Can you advance slide, please? All right, Dr. Basir.
All right, well, thank you again for joining us. I want to talk, I get to talk a little bit about our ethos, our philosophy as a shared group of educators ourselves and how we approach what we do, although we're in higher ed. And the three things we kind of like to leave with our audience is that on the one hand, we teach teachers about teaching by teaching. We think of teaching as very meta. So we see our role as teachers ourselves, right? So we practice teaching, we study teaching. I like to point out that Dr. Stephanie and myself, both our dissertations are on teaching and teaching behaviors. And we spend a great deal of time studying teaching and looking at teaching. So our program kind of exemplifies that, right? Our programming exemplifies looking at teaching as a construct and helping teachers become better in what they do, or inducting new people or teacher candidates into teaching. The other side that's really important to us, the second pillar, if you will, is that we learn to teach in community with each other. We don't view teaching as a kind of closed door, singular practice. For us, teaching is something, and a series of activities that are always on display. And so we always seek out opportunities to work together and to teach together. Again, we co-teach even in higher ed in some of our classes together. Dr. Stephanie and I have been co-teaching at least one of our classes for like, I don't know, 7 years. We lose track all the time because we've been doing it too long. But again, as a higher ed class, that's what we've done. And we see that as high value. So that's why we do it, right? We break the university systems all the time because they're like, we think there's one professor in a class. And our thing is, no, there's always a couple of us in certain classes because we value that so much. And then finally, we empower our students to become creative advocates for the students and families they serve. And I know there are quite a few of you on this call who are paras and you work with special school district to completely understand the need for teachers to be deeply engaged and committed, not just to students, but to their families. And we take that approach in our own work as well as we develop students to be teachers, right? That family piece is really important and it's really critical to what we get to do.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Master's of Arts in Teaching degree with the emphasis in special ed. Yes, as Dr. Basir said, in keeping with our overall ethos, we teach our candidates in collaboration with each other. I think some central pieces of the MAT are a few things. I think the MAT really gives special educators a robust foundation in both very comprehensive, systematic, individualized instruction, as well as inclusive practices that meet the needs of the learner in the general education setting. I think we do that extremely robustly and extremely well. Some tools that we use to help us, Dr. Basir mentioned technology a little bit ago. We heavily lean into digital pedagogy in our program. We have a one-to-one device program for our initial certification students so that everyone who enters our initial cert programs takes a course called digital pedagogy and at the same time gets a device, a Surface Pro tablet that then they use and keep throughout the duration of their program and then beyond. All the faculty have the device and teach with them. The students learn with them. And it provides a very cohesive pedagogical experience moving through the whole program. Dr. Yuba is going to post something in the chat too, which is our School of Education webpage link. If you scroll about halfway down that page, you're going to see a video of myself talking about two distinctive technologies too that we have and are expanding in our teacher preparation programs. One of them is classroom simulation technology, which it allows you to engage in teaching practice in classrooms with students, as well as practice sessions that might involve, for example, IEP discussions or discussions between a special educator and a paraprofessional. But because it is simulation technology, it allows you to do it in a safe space and to pause it and back up and do it again. We also use video tagging software that allows us to take video footage and then you do something called a tag session with it. A tag is a fancy word for saying a label or a look for. So it allows you to dissect film footage in light of different look fors that you're trying to analyze. And then it gives you beautiful data at the end of that tag session that then will allow a teacher candidate to set some goals and make some decisions about, okay, so this is what I'm going to work on the next time. All of this is done again in groups of students who are working together to be in those simulations together, to tag their videos in collaboration with each other. Next slide, please. So this also comes out of a very firm stance in philosophical beliefs as kind of a foundation for making instructional decisions. So we don't believe that educational philosophy is just an academic exercise that you flesh out and you write a paper and you stick it in a drawer somewhere or leave it in the cloud. It actually is a living, breathing document that you refine over time and that you refer to as you are making instructional decisions in the classroom, as you're having those kinds of professional collaborations in schools with your colleagues. So it is something that is a touchstone that you use as you are working through the field. It's interesting, in my doctoral degree, I remember a pivotal article that I read that talks about the variables that keep teachers in the field. And one of the variables that stood out very distinctly was teachers who have a strong philosophical stance in who they are and what they are about in their practice. And I think that really undergirds a lot of the design and the work that we do in our certification programs. Nuts and bolts, our MAT is 36 hours of coursework, 14 hours of field experience. When you enter the program, you have a full transcript evaluation done by our certification officer to see if there is any potential coursework that you've done as a part of your undergrad degree or other kinds of coursework that might transfer in to meet those certification requirements. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to hand off to Dr. Renee, who will tell you more about our applied behavior analysis program.
So some of you may work with BCBAs and some of you may not. So I just want to tell you, what is a BCBA? A BCBA is a board certified behavior analyst, and they have an opportunity to do some very rewarding work that helps people make significant improvements in their lives. They evaluate learners' behaviors and they develop behavior plans with the goal of improving communication and behavioral skills over time. They work with teachers, parents, and therapists. They're in high demand, and I know that Molly will speak to where they work in a special school district. And basically they get a credential or like a teacher certification. It's a board certified certification. So our program is aligned with the governing board, the VCI governing board. We have the most updated standards and has been approved according to the latest task list. We offer a 33 credit hour MA. It's fully online. And that program is, you need to have an undergraduate certificate or degree, sorry, to apply for that 33 credit hour program. The teachers, as you see, you know, they're skilled in the work of the ABA field, and there is a capstone project at the end of that MA. And then we also have a 21 credit hour online program, which is an advanced graduate certificate. So if you already have your master's, you can apply for the 21 credit hour program. That's fully online as well. It takes 4 semesters to complete. There's plenty of job openings in this field. And once you complete the program, you have so many hours that you need to have supervised in the field. Molly's going to talk about how that can be done at special school district. And then you apply to sit at the board approved exam. If you want to follow up with us regarding the BCBA program or the MAT, just click on the link that we put in the chat for you to follow up. It's just a quick form. You just put in your name and your contact information. So I will now transition us to Molly at Special School District, who will speak to you about some incentives to get enrolled in our programs.
Great, thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Molly Bolton, and I am the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. And so I am going to work from my notes that I took from Dan Kelly, who is the Director of Office of, they changed their name and I'm not going to get it right, but OCSE, which used to be formerly known as HR. So basically, Webster and SSD have a corporate partnership, and they have for many, many years. So if you're an employee for SSD and you take courses from Webster, you do get 20% off those credit hours. And you do have to show verification of your employment each time you register to be able to utilize that discount. Also, we do have, some of the incentives that we have, with a master's degree, you automatically move over to step 3 of the pay scale, and that would be on the teacher pay scale or the para pay scale. So there's definitely an incentive there if you already have your bachelor's degree. If you don't have a degree yet, you may just have some hours and you may want to work towards that bachelor's. Again, having that bachelor's degree would move you up on the pay scale for that. A couple things I want to highlight. We do now for our paraprofessionals have the registered behavior technician, or RBT, para position as well. And those positions are focused on applied behavior analysis, or ABA services. And so definitely, if you're already an RBT or you are looking to become an RBT, the BCBA program would be very beneficial for you. We have both 10-month and 12-month BCBA positions in the district, and they are both covered under the SDNEA union. We do have a 10-month pay scale and a 12-month pay scale that will be hopefully revised very soon for the upcoming year. So you could kind of see those opportunities if you decided to go with that program. Every year we do hire about 25 to 30 paraprofessionals who have done a para to teacher route or certification. So, we have openings. And so that is always a consideration for you, as you're moving forward in your programming. Currently, under our current joint resolution for paraprofessionals, tuition reimbursement is only for 3 hours. However, under the new revised joint resolution that has been ratified by the union, and is going to our board, I believe this evening. We are proposing that that be bumped up to 6 credit hours, and that could be graduate or undergraduate, either one. And so just know that we'll have that tuition reimbursement available. So currently, right now, we're budgeting about $500,000 for tuition reimbursement. Some of that funding is coming from a DESE grant that we have that will be available through the summer and somewhat into the fall. But we also have the budget line in our budget to continue that. And that is actually on tap to increase the following year. What we would also say is, so there was a question about, is that 3 hours a semester? I believe right now that is 3 hours per year. And so that's why we really need to increase that. But we'll know more once the board approves that joint resolution. So with the DESE grant, again, that's not long-term, but we do have that budget line that will be long-term. But what we would also say is, even if you hear rumblings that we're out of money for tuition reimbursement, we would encourage you to still apply. Because our board this past year, even though we exhausted our budget funds, went ahead and approved additional funds because they definitely see the benefit in investing in our employees and having them further their education, which benefits our students. So they have been very open to increasing that amount if needed. The other thing I would say is there's also a rumor out there that SSD does not allow folks who are going through programs to do their student teaching or their field experience hours within SSD, and that is not true. We do allow that. And if you're looking at the BCBA program, we actually, many of our BCBAs will often supervise folks for those clinical hours as well. And then we also have had situations where maybe you're working in a cross-categorical room, but maybe your passion is to teach students with autism. And so there have been situations where we have had someone who wanted to student teach in a more center-based classroom or specific disability type classroom. And we have been able, if there is an opening in a classroom like that, to transfer that paraprofessional into one of those openings so that they were able to complete that practicum and student teaching experience with a population that they were interested in. Also, with, the other thing that has been on the table is the increase in salary for both paraprofessionals and teachers. And so with that increase in salary, this may be a good time for you to consider, furthering your education as well, because you'll kind of get that salary bump. But then also, as you increase your educational experiences, you'll be moving over columns on our pay scale, which will help you in the long run.